Greetings, my geography-loving viewer. Where are you watching from? A land of eternal summer or a place where winter shows up right on schedule? Leave a comment so we can build our subscriber world map and share the video. That's almost heroic. Let's go. Clara first crossed paths with Ryan Talbot during her freshman year of college, and it didn't take long before she was completely smitten. There was something irresistible about his infectious energy, offbeat humor, and the effortless way he could lift her spirits. Ryan had a talent for meaningful surprises and always found imaginative ways to show he was thinking of her. Some of their most treasured memories came from meandering around campus on calm Sunday afternoons or sneaking into empty lecture halls just to talk for hours without interruption. His striking looks combined with a gentle, thoughtful nature, something rare among college guys, made him unforgettable. Clara's parents were immediately charmed by him, and Ryan's own family welcomed her as if she'd always belonged. His sister Kathy once teased, "If you two ever split up, we're keeping her." As Ryan neared graduation, he accepted a promising offer with a major investment firm headquartered on the West Coast. At the same time, Clara was wrapping up her degree in education and applying for teaching roles in Orange County, conveniently close to Ryan's new job in Anaheim. Before long, she secured a position teaching 7th grade math at a local middle school. To celebrate her new job, Ryan organized a romantic dinner overlooking the ocean in San Clemente. Just before dessert was served, he dropped to one knee and asked her to marry him. The ring sparkled, nearly 2 carats, set in gold that once belonged to his grandmother. Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as she embraced him and whispered, "Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes." Applause erupted from nearby diners who had witnessed the heartfelt moment. Nearly 10 years later, Clara was 32, happily married to Ryan, and mom to 6-year-old twins, Michael and Sarah. She was still teaching, but the profession had started to wear her down. Though she still found purpose in shaping young minds, the heavy workload, challenging parents, and time spent away from her kids had taken their toll. Gratefully, she and Ryan had always been wise with their finances, which allowed her to step back from teaching, even if the next chapter was uncertain. She took the leap, leaving her job and giving herself the space to figure out what came next. She didn't have to wait long. Just 5 months later, something unexpected sparked a new direction. Clara had remained incredibly close with her college roommate, Kara, since they met during their first year. The two had been inseparable throughout college, living together all 4 years and even sharing an apartment during Clara's engagement. Clara was the calm, grounded one, while Kara was impulsive, fiery, and fearless. Calling Kara spontaneous didn't quite cover it. She lived for the thrill, often diving headfirst into plans without thinking twice. Their friendship thrived on balance. Clara often played the voice of reason, pulling Kara back from her wilder schemes. While Kara sometimes bristled in the moment, she always ended up thankful for Clara's steady presence. It was during one of Kara's classic spur-of-the-moment adventures that Clara found herself unexpectedly charting a new course. In late January, Kara called with a favor. She needed a date for her boss's wedding in Napa. She pitched the plan with her usual flair. "It'll be epic. Wine, music, and a whole guest list of hot professionals. You've got to come." Clara laughed and called her "Married to the Twin," a nickname that never failed to make Kara roll her eyes. "Don't be so boring," Kara teased. "Let that picture-perfect blonde hair down for once. A little time away from Ryan and the kids won't kill you." "Why don't we bring Ryan too?" Clara offered. "Nice try," Kara smirked. "It's a +1, not plus everyone. Just you, Cinderella." Later that night, once the twins were asleep, Clara brought it up to Ryan. Just as she expected, he didn't blink. "Go," he said, smiling. "Sounds like a blast. And if you happen to stop by Frog's Leap, grab a case of that 2016 Cabernet we love." When she asked about the kids, Ryan waved it off. "Perfect timing. I was planning to take them to my parents this weekend anyway. They'll be thrilled." Clara felt genuinely grateful to have a husband who was so supportive and understanding. 3 weeks later, she was standing on the grounds of an elegant Napa vineyard, watching Kara flirt and spin around the dance floor with a much younger groomsman. Sitting at a table nearby, Clara found herself in conversation with one of the bride's cousins, Sally, who casually joked that the whole wedding could have used a better planner. The comment landed more deeply than expected. As Clara took in the chaos around her and kept half an eye on Kara's questionable dance partner, an idea quietly began to take shape. 6 months later, that passing thought had grown into something tangible. Clara officially launched her own event planning business. We Plan, You Play. Always naturally organized and detail-obsessed, she took the same dedication she once brought to teaching and applied it to coordinating weddings, corporate functions, and reunions. She threw herself into market research, analyzed competitors, and pinpointed how her strengths could stand out. Fueled by both passion and precision, Clara embraced this new professional chapter with open arms, and she never looked back. By the time her business hit the 2-year mark, she had found her rhythm, concentrating almost exclusively on small-scale weddings, particularly those set against the breathtaking vistas of California's shoreline. That's when she met Brandon Dalton. Brandon owned and operated a trio of upscale boutique hotels, each perfectly suited for luxurious destination weddings. His properties were nestled in San Diego, Santa Barbara, and along the Monterey coastline, and all were thriving thanks to his leadership. He poured heart and soul into the business, managing a hand-picked team of elite staff whom he paid generously and held to uncompromising standards. At just 26, Brandon made a daring move. He invested virtually every cent he had, and admittedly more than he should have, into a weathered, 90-year-old Santa Barbara estate on the verge of collapse. Through unwavering commitment and meticulous financial planning, he managed to open just in time, running slightly over budget, but nothing disastrous. For the first 2 years, the project consumed him. He worked over 100 hours each week and didn't take a single day off. The business came close to collapsing, not from poor service or a lack of quality, but because, despite glowing feedback, word of mouth grew agonizingly slowly. By the 3rd year, the operation finally broke even. The 4th brought profits. 3 years after that, he launched his San Diego location. 2 years on, Monterey joined the list. 14 years later, Brandon was still deeply involved, upholding his relentless pace. But he'd also gained a certain reputation. He enjoyed the finer things: excellent wine, great music, and the company of interesting women. Those who knew him well summed him up with a playful acronym, CBNA, confirmed bachelor, not an asshole. He was blunt but respectful, always up front with women. He wasn't looking for anything permanent. At 40, he was confident, wealthy, and entirely content with the life he had built. About 16 months before things began to unravel, Clara Brandon Dalton and her right-hand woman, Layla Trenton, attended a hospitality expo at the Los Angeles Convention Center on South Figueroa. The event catered to industry vendors and service providers. While casually exploring the final stretch of the third aisle, they came across a booth run by a woman named Clara Talbot. Her company bore the name, We Plan, You Pay. Later, Brandon would admit that while her booth was polished, it was her bright blue eyes, sparkling with mischief, that truly caught his interest. Clara would later tell him in private that she'd done a discreet double-take when she first saw him. He was undeniably attractive, but lacked the arrogance that often accompanied good looks. Their conversation lasted close to an hour. Although he kept things within professional bounds, a spark was unmistakable. Brandon asked thoughtful, targeted questions. What had she achieved so far? Who were her key collaborators? How did she engage with executives? What had been her hardest event to date and her most fulfilling? He also assessed her business savvy, asking about operating costs, profit margins, and her pricing strategy. Interspersed were a few lighter, more personal questions. What wine did she prefer? Could she dance? Was she drawn more to ocean escapes or mountain hideaways? He noticed the ring on her finger but didn't press. He simply enjoyed the conversation, mentally weighing whether they could collaborate. Clara answered with poise and ease, clearly enjoying the discussion. She quickly recognized that he was a seasoned professional, serious but refreshingly down to earth. She also welcomed the slight shift in tone when he added playful touches. "Pinot Noir," she replied. "Willamette Valley, 2014 vintage if I can find it, especially Evening Lands La Source from Eola Amity Hills. I can handle a waltz if necessary," she added with a grin, "but I'm better at the Carlton, the twist, or the tango, though only with my husband. Mountains in the summer, quiet beaches in the winter." She didn't ask anything personal in return, opting instead to observe. Layla Trenton stood close by, quietly entertained. She'd worked with Brandon long enough to recognize when someone genuinely intrigued him. He was always polite, but whenever he subtly leaned in during a chat, it was his quiet giveaway. As the conversation wound down, they exchanged contact info, and Brandon offered a courteous invitation. "Mrs. Talbot, Layla and I are grabbing dinner at Fogo de Chão shortly. Would you care to join us?" Layla noted his use of Mrs. Talbot, unusual for him. It signaled his intention to keep things professional. Clara declined warmly, explaining that she wanted to get home to see her husband, Ryan, and their twins before bedtime. Still, she mentioned she'd love to check out one of his properties, maybe in the coming weeks. By the time they parted ways, a loose plan had been made. She'd visit his original Santa Barbara hotel, his personal favorite, the following Wednesday, over lunch. Clara and Layla traded numbers with him, shook hands, and then the moment was over. As they walked away, Layla glanced toward Brandon. He was visibly intrigued. Without breaking stride, she quipped, "So, that's what that was?" Clara's follow-up visit exceeded her expectations. She arranged a lunch meeting with both Brandon and Layla, making the 2-hour drive from her home in Orange County to the Santa Barbara property. She was eager to see if the charisma she'd sensed at the convention had been genuine, or just good salesmanship. Climbing the steps to the elegant entrance, she spotted Brandon waiting. He was dressed with intention: tailored khakis, a dark navy MJ Bale button-down, polished Italian loafers, and a belt to match. The outfit flattered him, emphasizing the chiseled lines of his face and the warmth of his deep-set eyes and thick dark hair. Clara rarely noticed other men, not because she was prudish or naive, far from it. She had a husband she loved, and most men simply didn't compare. Clara had to admit, Brandon was more striking in person than she remembered. The realization threw her slightly off balance. One thing stood out right away: Layla wasn't with him. "It's really great to see you, Clara," Brandon said with a broad smile, extending his hand enthusiastically. "I've been looking forward to showing you around and discussing how we might collaborate." "Appreciate it, Brandon," she replied, returning his handshake with equal warmth. "This place is absolutely gorgeous at first glance." Neither of them could fully recognize it in the moment, but the electricity from their initial meeting in LA hadn't faded. It was still very much alive. They shared a mutual admiration for drive and earned achievement. Neither had time for showmanship or inflated egos. They pushed themselves to grow, to level up continually. And while they were both undeniably attractive, neither leaned on it as their defining trait. Clara had been intentional with her wardrobe, a refined, sleeveless black dress by Tory Burch that suggested elegance without shouting it, complemented by a pale linen scarf that made her blue eyes all the more vivid. The hemline stopped just above the knee, subtly highlighting her long, athletic legs. A pair of Stuart Weitzman sandals, with just enough heel to give her a little extra height, completed the ensemble. Clara was always pragmatic. She understood that someone like Brandon might notice how a woman presented herself, and she believed in making every detail count in business. Her friends often teased her, calling her graceful as a dove, clever as a fox. As they strolled through the lobby, Clara slipped her hand into his and began firing off questions about the venue. The staff greeted her personally, a testament to the impression she'd already made. Once they were seated on the patio for lunch, a small vase of local wildflowers stood in the center of the table, purples, whites, and deep reds vibrant against the white linen and the blue expanse of the Pacific behind them. As if by design, a bottle of Pinot Noir, the very one Clara had mentioned during their first encounter, was already open and breathing on the table. Brandon pulled out her chair, thinking to himself, "Whoever coordinated this is sharp. I need to be sharper, or I'll get outmatched." Their conversation started light. The coastal drive, recent wildfires, the unbeatable view. About 10 minutes in, Layla appeared, all smiles, holding a slim folder of documents for the business portion of the lunch. Clara rose and embraced her. She felt a genuine warmth toward Brandon, no doubt, but Layla commanded her own kind of respect, and Clara was sincerely glad to see her. An hour passed easily in casual conversation before they pivoted to the reason for her visit. Clara nursed a glass and a half of wine, enough to be gracious, but nowhere near enough to distract from the day's agenda. She made her intentions clear. She wasn't here for a getaway. This was strictly professional. After lunch, Layla took her leave, and Brandon led Clara on a detailed tour of Winfield Scott. Clara came prepared. She knew the hotel's name came from a 16th-century shipwreck off the Santa Barbara coast. She teased that Brandon must have struck gold in more ways than one. He chuckled, gave her a wink, and said, "Not the kind of treasure I'm looking for." They both laughed and kept walking. Soon after, Layla rejoined them, and the three made their way to Brandon's office to discuss the more formal aspects of the proposal. They tossed around a number of promising ideas, including hosting events like weddings and reunions at the estate. By the time they wrapped up, the mood in the room was optimistic and energized. Later in the day, with their work complete, Brandon had her white Passat brought to the front entrance. Layla offered her goodbyes, leaving Brandon and Clara to share a quiet moment alone. He extended his hand again, steady, warm, and just a touch too long. "I really enjoyed today, Clara," he said, his tone more personal than professional now. "I think we'll make a great team, but honestly, I'm just glad I had the chance to spend more time with you." Then, in a move that hovered right on the edge, he leaned in and brushed her cheek with a light kiss. Clara gave him a smile in return, thanked him for the afternoon, and assured him she'd follow up with Layla soon regarding a few wedding clients that might be a good fit for the venue. As she drove down the long, tree-lined driveway, an unexpected emotion began to surface. There was something about Brandon that had gotten under her skin. She shook her head, trying to clear the thought. But the way he stood waiting for her arrival, the thoughtful details of the day, it all lingered. That's when something in the back seat caught her eye in the mirror. It was a children's book, The Most Magnificent Thing, one of Sarah's favorites. They must have left it there on their last trip. The sight grounded her instantly. "Clara, get a grip," she scolded herself. "You've been around Kara too much lately. This isn't high school. You have a husband, 2 beautiful kids. Pull it together." Her frustration bubbled up. She had a good life, a solid marriage. There was zero room for fantasy, no justification for letting her mind drift toward anyone but Ryan. She spent the next 20 minutes berating herself in silence, then finally switched on a leadership podcast to help redirect her thoughts. But whether she wanted to admit it or not, she had approached a boundary she knew she should never cross. Back at Winfield Scott, Brandon returned to his office to finish up a few remaining tasks. Once done, he headed upstairs to rest before his usual evening beach run. Lying across the bed, his thoughts turned back to the day, and to Clara. Yes, she was beautiful. But that wasn't it, not all of it. He'd dated gorgeous women before, but there was something else about her. It was the way she carried herself, the sparkle in her eyes, the way she moved with quiet assurance. Mostly, though, it was the way she looked at him before she left. She was married. Still, she was unforgettable. And at that very moment, Ryan Talbot was at home, laughing in the kitchen with Michael and Sarah, completely immersed in the simple joy of family. As Ryan moved through the kitchen, his thoughts drifted to Clara. The aroma of dinner lingered in the air, and the distant laughter of their children echoed warmly through the house. It was in that quiet, fleeting moment that he felt the full weight of his blessings. By the time Clara walked in, the table was already set. For the next hour, they shared a peaceful meal, listening as Sarah animatedly told them how she had found the neighbor's cat, Ralph, lounging in their backyard. She'd played with him until Mrs. Bowling arrived to take him back home. That story ended with Sarah asking a simple question. Maybe it was time they got a pet of their own. Later that evening, once the children were tucked into bed, Clara turned to Ryan, perhaps needing the reassurance that his heart still beat only for her, and made love to him. Half a year slipped by, along with 4 weddings, each one flawlessly coordinated under the We Plan You Play brand at Winfield Scott. But in those months, more than bouquets and bridal toasts changed. Something more subtle had already begun to shift. Maybe it was something seemingly insignificant, like the way Brandon would rest his hand lightly on her back when opening a door, or how he'd brush her arm gently in mid-conversation. More telling, though, were his visits to her home, uncannily timed to when Clara had company over. She noticed the pattern, even if she never addressed it. She never pulled away from his compliments. She didn't stop him when he flirted. If anything, she allowed it to continue. Ryan had only ever joined her once to scout a potential venue, and that had been in the early days. On that occasion, Brandon was supposedly unavailable. Or so they were told. It was just past midnight. Another wedding had ended in happy celebration, and Clara and Layla had just bid farewell to the glowing parents of the bride with hugs and heartfelt thanks. The cleanup crew was nearly finished when the two of them found themselves seated on the quiet patio outside the hotel, sipping leftover Dom Perignon. Technically, the champagne had ended up in Layla's bag by mistake, or so they claimed, and somehow found its way behind a box of salad in the industrial fridge. These things happen. I know it's late, Layla said with a tired sigh, slipping off her heels. But can we talk for just a minute? Of course, Clara replied, taking off her own shoes and stretching her sore feet. What's going on? You know how much I love working with you, and I really do consider you a close friend, Layla started, a note of seriousness creeping into her voice. Clara gave a small nod, feeling the shift in tone. I don't usually wade into people's personal lives, Layla continued, but I'd feel like a lousy friend if I didn't speak up. Can I say something a bit personal? Without responding aloud, Clara nodded again. If you leave the door open for him, he's going to walk through it, Layla said softly. Clara looked at her, surprised, but said nothing. I care about both of you, Layla went on, but I saw it from day one in L.A. You're exactly Brandon's type, and it's not just about your looks, though obviously you're gorgeous. It's more than that. You're intelligent, warm, steady. That kind of woman drives him wild. The only thing holding him back is his respect for your marriage. But don't kid yourself. If he thinks you want him, he won't hesitate. He'll justify it. Tell himself no real harm will be done if it stays hidden. But he knows better. He's clever, Clara. He thinks 10 steps ahead while everyone else is still figuring out the first 2. That's why he's waiting. He won't make a move unless he's convinced you're ready to fall. Clara listened in silence, her gaze drifting away, not out of shame, but because Layla was laying down the truth without dressing it up. Clara, Layla said gently, you can't dip your toes into something with Brandon and expect the rest of your life to stay untouched. He's not going to steal you away from Ryan and build a new life with you. You're not going to leave your marriage. You won't abandon your twins. And Brandon's not interested in stepping into your husband's shoes. He's fascinated by you, sure. But it's the kind of fascination that burns hot and fast, not the kind that ends in forever. So you have to choose the life you've built with Ryan, or the man who could blow it all to pieces for one intoxicating, reckless moment. Tears welled in Clara's eyes as she whispered, Layla, I'm so confused. I don't even know what to feel anymore. Ryan is everything. He's thoughtful, passionate. We still laugh together, talk for hours. The chemistry's still alive. He supports me, challenges me. I honestly can't imagine my life without him. And the idea of hurting him, it physically hurts me. Her voice cracked. But then there's Brandon. Her sentence trailed off, tangled in the emotions that swirled inside her. There's something in him I can't ignore, something Ryan doesn't have, she said quietly. He's like a storm, and I want to stand right in the middle of it. It's chaotic, it's risky, but it's thrilling in a way I can't explain. She took a slow sip from her glass, letting the silence grow. Layla said nothing. She knew Clara needed room to process, to sit with the truth, no matter how messy it felt. "I've never felt boxed in," Clara went on. "Not by Ryan, not by anyone. When I fell in love with him, it was intense and real, but it never drowned me. Brandon, though, he overwhelms me. When he looks at me a certain way, I feel like I have no control, and that scares the hell out of me. Because if the moment ever came, if he reached for me, I'm terrified that I wouldn't hesitate to say yes." She shook her head slowly. 6 months ago, I would have laughed if someone suggested I'd ever be tempted by another man. That's just not who I am. I just can't accept this idea that women can do whatever they want outside of marriage and still expect complete fidelity from their husbands. Clara murmured, her voice thick with emotion and inner conflict. Marriage is meant to be a partnership. I can't even picture Ryan coming home and casually telling me he slept with another woman. It would destroy me. So why am I even letting these thoughts linger? Why am I playing with fire like this? Layla stayed silent, her expression softening as she watched her friend wrestle with guilt and longing. After a pause, she asked gently, "So, what do you plan to do?" Clara inhaled deeply before answering. "Most of me, maybe 80%, is devoted to staying true, to Ryan, to our kids, and I'm not giving up the company either. We've built something amazing. That part of me believes I can manage this, stay professional, keep my distance, and not let anything happen." She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper as she added, "But there's still that other piece of me, the smaller part, that wonders if I could pull it off without consequences, that no one would ever find out, that I could just do it, get it out of my system, and go back to normal. Most days, I believe I'll stay strong. But every once in a while," her voice cracked. Overwhelmed, she covered her face and cried quietly into her hands. Without saying a word, Layla stood and walked over, wrapping her arms around her. She didn't try to offer advice or platitudes, just held her in silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft and steady. "You already know the difference between right and wrong. You know what's at stake. All I can hope is that, when the time comes, you choose something you won't regret." The next morning, Layla strode into Brandon's office without so much as a knock. Her face was expressionless, but her eyes held fire. She locked eyes with him, refusing to look away. "If you follow through with this," she said coolly, "I'm done. I'll quit and never come back. And don't think you can sneak anything past me. I've worked beside you for 7 years. I'll see it. No matter how careful you are, I'll know." She turned and left without waiting for his reply. The door clicked shut behind her with quiet finality. 3 weeks later, everything came to a head. Following Clara's confession and Layla's warning, an opulent seaside wedding was disrupted by a sudden thunderstorm. Rain crashed down unexpectedly, sending guests scattering in every direction. Chaos took over as people scrambled for cover. Clara and Layla sprang into action, barking orders and guiding everyone into the hotel, all while helping the soaked bride and groom make it inside safely. By the time the impromptu indoor reception ended, it was well past midnight. The last of the guests drifted toward their rooms, tired but thankful the celebration hadn't been a complete disaster. Clara and Brandon lingered beneath a covered section of the now deserted patio, shielded from the rain and hidden from view. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, noting the frustration etched on her face. She had poured her heart into this wedding, and the weather had stolen the magic. "You did everything you could," he said softly, keeping one arm loosely around her. "You can't control the weather, and honestly, people still had fun. A couple of years from now, they'll probably laugh about tonight." She didn't step away. Instead, she leaned into his side, her head resting against his chest. In that moment, the quiet comfort she felt overpowered her earlier resolve. The voice urging her to stay strong, the one that made up the majority, was quickly fading. She let out a slow breath, turned toward him fully, wrapped her arms around him, and looked into his eyes. Before leaning in, Brandon spoke in a low, even tone. You have to be absolutely sure. I won't pressure you. This has to be your decision, completely. If there's any doubt, we walk away and keep things as they've always been. The last thread of hesitation snapped. The line that once stood so clearly had now been erased. Take me to bed, she whispered. They didn't speak at first. Later, tangled in sheets and shadows, the silence gave way to hushed conversation. How would they keep this a secret? What precautions would they need to avoid suspicion? Brandon expressed concern, worried guilt might catch up with her and bring this to an abrupt end. Clara promised she could handle her emotions. She wanted this, so long as they remained discreet. She assured him she'd be gone after just a few hours of sleep, back home before anyone realized she'd ever left. Sleeping in wasn't an option, no matter how much she wanted it. He nodded, agreeing to see her out quietly when the time came. Clara crept into her bedroom, reset her alarm, collapsed onto the bed and was asleep almost instantly. Meanwhile, Brandon stripped the sheets from his bed, did the laundry himself, remade everything, and lay down just as the early staff began arriving at 6:30 a.m. What could possibly go wrong? By the time Clara pulled into her driveway, the sun had risen high overhead. It was already Sunday afternoon. As soon as she parked, her twins, Sarah and Michael, came charging out of the house to greet her. They were nearly 8 years old, bouncing with energy, eager to tell her everything. Daddy took us to the big kiddie park yesterday. We went on the huge slide. Ralph came back, and Bowling brought cookies when she came to get him. Daddy made Mickey Mouse pancakes today, and he said we might go to Disneyland next week. One of them paused and looked up at her curiously. Mommy, did Daddy ever take you on rides like that? The question hit her like a blow. Her husband's love, his thoughtfulness, everything he had done with and for the kids, it all collided in her mind with the memory of last night. The echoes of what she'd said to Brandon, the things they'd done, rushed back, uninvited and merciless. And with them came the crushing realization of everything she stood to lose. As she zipped her overnight bag closed, one undeniable thought echoed through her mind. This is really happening. The events of the previous evening had left her feeling sluggish, her body slightly off pace. Her spirits dipped further when she noticed Ryan standing in the doorway, casually drying his hands on a dish towel. He was wearing those Adidas shorts and the fitted cycling shirt she always admired from afar. God, he looks amazing, she thought. What the hell am I even doing? She placed her bag gently on the floor, stepped into his arms, and let out a long breath. Hey, baby, she said softly. That wedding was a train wreck. I'm just glad to be back here with you. I hope the twins didn't wear you out too much, Ryan replied, grinning. We always miss you, Cinderella. But I honestly love my weekends with them, and I'm proud of everything you're building. You're crushing it. I saw the storm come through on the radar, he added. Figured your bookings would skyrocket. Come on, let me get you a glass of wine and rub your feet. She felt a wave of emotion swell inside her. That nickname, his dedication to their kids, his unwavering belief in her dreams, it all struck her at once. Get a grip, girl, don't ruin this. Wine and foot massages? This man was a rare find. She knew better than to jeopardize the life they'd made together. Later that evening, once the kids had gone to bed, they brought their wine glasses out to the hot tub to unwind. Ryan confessed he was totally wiped and asked if they could skip anything intimate. She pretended to be mildly disappointed, but quickly admitted she was exhausted too. There was no need to explain the real reason, and he didn't pry. He trusted her implicitly. The following Monday, Ryan casually asked if she'd be up for a date night on Tuesday. Clara's face lit up. Absolutely, she said without hesitation. That Tuesday morning, while she was still asleep, Ryan quietly packed a bag for both of them. Before leaving for work, he left a handwritten note on the nightstand. Wear something magical for your Cinderella date. Be ready by 4 p.m. Don't worry about the kids. Everything's taken care of. Right at 4 o'clock, they gave the twins a big hug and thanked Kara, who happened to be visiting and had offered to babysit. Ryan drove them south along the coastline to the Ritz-Carlton, where sweeping views of Dana Point stretched out before them. As the car pulled into the lot, Clara's eyes widened. "Wait, Kara's staying the whole night?" "Yep," Ryan replied, nodding. "I didn't pack anything for this." "There's a bag in the trunk," he said, grinning. "While you were bathing the kids, Kara went over everything. She even slipped in an outfit for tonight." "You let her look through my underwear drawer?" Clara asked, half shocked. She said it was surprisingly spicy for a suburban mom, but she found something she thinks will work. "Oh, and she wants to take you lingerie shopping this week." "You're kidding," Clara laughed, her cheeks flushing. They walked hand in hand along the beach, savored an elegant dinner, and ended the night on a sixth-floor balcony. The Pacific stretched before them, still peaceful, unusually calm. With wine in hand, they opened up about their future, their hopes, ambitions, and where life might take them. Ryan told her he was close to making partner, more money, fewer work trips. He even suggested tagging along for one of her wedding weekends. The night was dark, and their eyes were fixed on the horizon, so he didn't notice the flicker of conflict that passed across her face. If he had, it might have been the first clue that something was amiss. Clara pushed the thought down, stood up, walked over to him, and kissed him on the cheek. "I'm ridiculously proud of you, Richard Michael Talbot." The next morning, over breakfast in bed, their conversation picked up where it had left off. "I'm so happy about your promotion," she told him, "and I'd love to have you travel with me sometimes. But you don't think I should shut down my business now that we're doing well financially, right?" Ryan didn't even hesitate. "No way," he said. "You love what you do, and I love seeing you light up doing it. I want to see how far you can take this." How did I land someone like this? She wondered silently. "Don't screw this up. Time to tighten the plan, with Brandon." Even with all the emotions swirling, guilt wasn't part of the equation, only fierce ambition. No room for reason, no room for restraint, only the hunger to have it all. Years later, she'd revisit this chapter in her memory, stunned by her own recklessness. People like to say that men were the ones who acted without thinking, but she had done the same. As she approached 30, her cravings had escalated, and she convinced herself she could manage everything, without fallout. She told herself that sooner or later, she and Brandon would drift apart. Yes, their bond was undeniable, but she was convinced he'd never truly fall for her. And as for her, she would never walk away from her family. Brandon would move on, and she would carry on with Ryan, surrounded by milestones, traditions, and a golden future they'd built together. She never once imagined how disastrously wrong things would go. 1 month later, Ryan officially became a partner. Clara was managing another major wedding, this time at a high-end hotel in San Diego. That weekend, she and Brandon had a serious talk about how to keep things discreet and under control. She'd been on birth control for 2 years. When she launched her business, she and Ryan had agreed their family was complete with their 2 beautiful children. But by late June, cracks began to form. She found herself in Brandon's office, locked in conversation about redefining the boundaries of what they had. In the beginning, Brandon had dangled a bonus in front of Clara, a reward if she surpassed the projected order targets. Their personal involvement aside, a romantic relationship that, for better or worse, had endured, they both understood the rules of engagement in their professional world. Emotions took a back seat to business. Clara hadn't forgotten his promise and wasted no time reminding him. Brandon, conceding that he had underestimated her professionally, acknowledged her success and agreed to fulfill his end of the deal. That was when Layla appeared in the doorway. "Great, you're both here," she said, stepping inside uninvited. She settled into one of the leather chairs across from them, not bothering to ask if it was okay. "Brandon, remember the conversation we had 4 months ago?" she asked, her tone calm but direct. "I told you that if you and Clara ever became involved, I'd leave." Clara's face registered shock, then gradually shifted to dread. Brandon stayed composed, showing no reaction. "I didn't think you'd disregard that warning," Layla continued, "but I guess I shouldn't be surprised." Maybe this was inevitable. She looked at each of them deliberately before speaking again. "That night during the hurricane, I remember everything. I was upstairs out on the patio with a glass of wine. I saw you kiss her, Brandon. Then I watched you carry her into your room." Her voice wavered slightly. It was one of the most painful moments I've ever witnessed. Not just because of what it meant for me personally, but because I had believed in what the two of you could become professionally. She turned to Clara, who opened her mouth to speak, but Layla held up a hand. "No, let me finish," she said, voice firm. "And yes, I am judging you. This whole thing is reckless and selfish. You're acting like impulsive teenagers, giving in to temptation without caring who gets hurt." She let the silence settle before continuing. "The Monday after that night, I began looking for a new position. The only reason I didn't leave sooner is because I had some promising offers to evaluate." She took a slow breath. "I'm relocating to Austin in early August. I've accepted an event coordinator role with a firm there." Her gaze fixed on Clara now. "I gave you fair warning. Maybe everything hasn't collapsed just yet, but don't kid yourself. Fallout is coming. I'm disappointed in you. We may not have known each other long, but you've shown a serious lack of judgment and respect for the commitments you've made, not just to Ryan, but in front of everyone who looks up to you. He doesn't deserve to be betrayed like this." She inhaled sharply. "I'm not even going to bring your kids into this, because thinking about the impact on them is too much for me to stomach." Layla turned back to address them both. "I'm going to stay professional. I won't let this damage what we've built over the years. I'll finish strong." Brandon visibly winced at her words. "But from this point forward, keep your personal lives out of the workplace. Don't explain it. Don't make it a storyline. The team here is solid. They don't need to be dragged into your choices. I'll tell them I got an offer too good to refuse. I trust you'll bring in someone capable to replace me. If you're asking me, Sharon would be a great fit, but it's your call. Thank you for 7 years that mattered. I hope the two of you find what you're looking for." She stood, left without another word, and closed the door behind her. Clara sat motionless, tears streaming down her cheeks. Brandon leaned forward, elbows on knees, muttering, "This is unreal." The breeze from the open French doors stirred the curtains. They had intended to spend the evening together, in every way, but now that clearly wasn't going to happen. Neither of them spoke. Eventually, Clara wiped her face. "I should go," she said softly. "This isn't the right time to try and sort any of this out." She paused. "We're both to blame for how things unfolded. But I mean it when I say I'm sorry for my part." She stood, walked slowly to the door, and left the office without looking back. Downstairs, she asked the valet to bring her car. Her plans had changed in an instant. She drove toward Orange County, her vision blurred with tears the entire way. Rather than returning home, she checked into a Courtyard Marriott using her business account. Ryan never reviewed those statements. During the drive, she had stopped to pick up a bottle of Maker's Mark. In the quiet of her hotel room, she poured a drink, took a sip, and then passed out shortly afterward. That marked the first consequence. Layla followed through on everything she said. She wrapped up her responsibilities during her 2-week notice and moved to Austin 10 days later. Brandon didn't try to stop her. He didn't offer more money, didn't try to persuade her to stay. He knew any gesture would feel insincere, maybe even insulting. He made a few attempts to bring it up, but Layla shut him down every time. "You lost the right to talk about this," she said flatly. Clara had wanted to reach out but couldn't find the words. Eventually, she sent a simple text. "I'm sorry my decisions hurt you. You were right, and I have to live with that." By early September, something had shifted between Clara and Brandon. Their dynamic wasn't as easy. Maybe it was the weight of guilt, or maybe just the discomfort of being exposed. Still, the spark between them never completely disappeared. By October, they had slipped back into a familiar rhythm. One Saturday evening, after finishing up a late wedding, they gave in again. They left WS in Brandon's BMW M8 convertible, driving along the coast to a private rental, a chalet perched above the Pacific Ocean. "This is breathtaking," Clara murmured, pressing her cheek to her stallion's neck. Earlier, she had told Ryan that she'd be scouting real estate in the Monterey region and wouldn't return until late Sunday evening at the earliest. She hadn't misled him entirely. She was in Monterey. She'd just omitted the detail that she was there with the man she was secretly involved with. Brandon didn't check out until 2 p.m., so the morning was theirs. They strolled along the beach, shared a leisurely lunch, and soaked in the final hours before returning to their regular lives. They paused briefly in Big Sur for a glass of wine, holding on to the fantasy just a bit longer. During the long drive back, over 5 hours, Clara felt a profound sense of fulfillment. Gratitude bubbled inside her for the charmed life she was leading. Her business was thriving, her children were happy, she had 2 men who adored her, and she was convinced that Layla's warnings had been baseless. It had been 15 months since Brandon entered her life. Their relationship turned intimate about 7 months after they met. Clara never saw it as an affair. In her mind, she had control over everything. The lies and betrayals she spun around Ryan didn't burden her with remorse. They made her feel sharp, focused, even energized. She had distanced herself from honesty so thoroughly that she genuinely believed these secret weekends with Brandon somehow made her a better wife. But the truth was about to crash down on her. The first weekend of December, Clara coordinated a wedding at Brandon's Monterey property, a boutique hotel just past Barrack Park. Though not as grand as Brandon's other venues, the Spanish Moss Hotel was perfect for smaller celebrations, especially weddings with under 50 guests. The Carlisle wedding had just 38 attendees, which made things manageable for Clara, and also left a number of rooms unoccupied. If Brandon had scrutinized the guest list more closely, he might have spotted the reservation under Mr. Talbot for the Belladonna Suite, a lavish room with a sweeping ocean view, a deep jacuzzi tub, and a majestic 4-poster bed. No Mrs. Talbot was listed. Ryan, who had recently been made a partner at his firm, had arranged a surprise weekend for his wife, hoping to whisk her away for a romantic escape. He had planned every detail, her favorite wine chilling, fresh flowers carefully placed, and scented bath oils laid out in advance. Though he'd sensed some emotional distance lately, Ryan attributed it to the everyday strain of parenting and work. He thought this spontaneous getaway might help close that gap. Nobody on staff recognized Ryan, allowing him to blend in unnoticed during the rehearsal dinner while Clara remained preoccupied with her tasks. He caught a fleeting glimpse of Brandon now and then, but they never made eye contact, and Ryan went unseen. He briefly considered approaching Brandon to speak in private, perhaps to introduce himself and explain his surprise plan. But they weren't friends, and Ryan wasn't sure how it would be received. An hour after the dinner wrapped up and still without a sign of Clara, Ryan decided to find her himself. She wasn't in the dining room or on the patio, but as he rounded a corner, he caught the soft murmur of voices, one of them unmistakably Clara's. He assumed she was finalizing the next day's arrangements with a staff member. Then, just before he turned the corner, he heard her voice dip into a low, suggestive whisper. "Not here. Let's wait until we're back in your room." Ryan froze. Then he stepped into view, and everything came crashing down. There they stood, Clara and Brandon, locked in an embrace. Shrouded in the soft shadows of evening, they didn't notice him at first. Clara whispered, "I love you so much, lover." Then she opened her eyes and spotted Ryan. Her face went pale with shock. "Ryan? What?" Brandon jumped back as if he'd seen a ghost, his skin suddenly drained of color. Ryan stood paralyzed, unable to process what he was seeing. He leaned back against the wall as tears flooded his eyes. His knees gave out as the truth hit him like a collapsing ceiling. Panicked, Clara rushed toward him, trembling. "Ryan, please! Oh my God! Ryan, what have I done?" Ryan didn't respond. He sat there, broken, as she wrapped her arms around him, both of them sobbing. Brandon stood several feet away, hands on his head, struggling to breathe, his face contorted in horror. Finally, Ryan looked up, tears streaking down his face. Clara gently held his cheeks, but only one word escaped his lips. "Why?" She opened her mouth to respond, but rage overtook Ryan before she could speak. "No!" he snapped, climbing to his feet and pulling away from her touch. She remained on her knees, pleading silently, but it didn't matter anymore. "Don't say anything," Ryan growled. "Not a word." Then his glare turned to Brandon, his voice laced with venom. "Take her, she's yours now." Turning away, he began to walk off. Clara scrambled after him, reaching out, but he wheeled around. "Don't touch me. Don't you dare lay a finger on me." His voice cracked, trembling with grief. "You're the mother of my children. You were my soulmate. You were everything." His face crumpled under the weight of pain. "And now it's all gone. You destroyed it. You destroyed me." He stared at her one last time, then said coldly, "Go. Be with him. Just stay away from me." Clara finally did the only thing that felt remotely right after a year of chaos. She let Ryan walk away. Now wasn't the time to try to comfort him. She knew that. She had broken his heart. She could see it all over his face. He needed distance, and she had no choice but to respect that. She herself was barely functioning, paralyzed by her own emotions, unable to think clearly, let alone speak. Turning to Brandon, she asked him for a moment alone. Then she returned to her room, the bed still perfectly made, white sheets unwrinkled, the pillows untouched, and the blanket folded just so. She collapsed onto it, shaking. At 34 years old, a mother of twins and a wife, Clara Thompson was staring down the consequences of a disaster entirely of her own design. And what terrified her most was the knowledge that there was no undoing it. Meanwhile, Ryan was trying to claw his way out of the fog of pain clouding his mind. Back in his own room, he sank into the chair at the desk and sat motionless for nearly an hour. Eventually, a flicker of clarity broke through the anguish, just enough for him to consider his next move. One thing was clear. He couldn't stay here a moment longer than necessary. But where should he go? What made sense now? He decided he'd head back home. By the time he got there, it would be around 7 in the morning, early enough that the office would be empty on a Sunday. He could slip in unnoticed, shower, get changed, and prepare himself. By the time anyone saw him, he'd have a story ready. If it was only the kids at home, he could keep the facade going a little longer. Before leaving, Ryan wrote a letter to Clara. He folded it neatly, sealed it in an envelope, and left it plainly visible on the table, her name written across the front. "Clara, I'm going back to the kids. Right now, that's the only thing I know how to do. I need space, time to think. Saying you broke my heart doesn't begin to cover it. That's like calling the Titanic sinking a leak. I'm drowning, completely lost. If and when you come back, email me before you arrive. I won't be there when you get in. I can't see you. Not now. I need time to process this train wreck. I'll tell the kids I'm traveling for work and that you'll be staying with them this week. It guts me to leave them with you, but I don't have a choice. Don't call. Don't text. Don't reach out at all. Just email me when you're close. That's the only thing I'm asking. I don't know if you'll respect this, but I hope there's still something human in you that will. You already crossed the line the moment you decided to betray us, however long ago that was. I loved you completely, in every way a person can love another, and you crushed it like it meant nothing. You left me destroyed, and right now I can't feel anything toward you except hate. How could you do this?" By the time Brandon emerged from his room, Ryan had already gone. He noticed the envelope, picked it up, and hesitated. The following morning, he decided to bring it to Clara. At first, he thought he'd hand it to her directly, but when the moment came, he couldn't bear to deliver such brutal truth to someone already shattered. He blamed himself, heavily, for not handling their affair with more caution. He'd been careless. He knew better. He should have been wiser, more responsible. Now, someone he cared deeply for was broken, and there was nothing he could do to make it right. Once her sobs had softened and her breathing steadied a little, he quietly stepped into her room and placed the envelope on the nightstand. Then he exited, hovering just outside her door, unsure why, but needing to be close in case she needed anything. Around 6 a.m., Clara finally stirred after 3 hours of restless, broken sleep. She hadn't meant to drift off, but emotional exhaustion had overtaken her. She rose, splashed cold water on her face, and used the bathroom. When she came out, the tears came back instantly. That's when she saw the envelope. Seeing her name scrawled on the front sent a dizzying wave through her. Clara had always prided herself on being strong, for Ryan, for her kids, for everyone. But in that moment, staring at the letter, she felt completely unmoored. She didn't have to open it to know how deeply it would hurt. And she knew she had earned every word inside. Wordlessly, tears slipping down her face, she sat on the bed, opened the envelope, and read. Then she crumpled to the floor, sobbing without restraint. Brandon appeared and knelt beside her, wrapping his arms around her shoulders. She held on to him like a drowning woman clinging to the surface. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to blame him for luring her into this mess. But deep down, she couldn't deny the truth. They had both made the choice. She remembered how he had insisted from the beginning that she give clear, unmistakable consent, or he would walk away. And she remembered Layla's warnings too. Clara finally admitted to herself that she was the architect of her own downfall. Maybe she had been selfish, maybe even cruel, but she was no victim. These were her actions, her consequences. "I'm going home," she said quietly, her voice raw but firm. "As soon as I can pull myself together. I don't know what's waiting for me, but I won't run from it." "I know," Brandon said gently. "I wish things had turned out differently. But if there's one thing I know about you, it's that you don't run." He hugged her softly, no longer as a lover, but simply as someone who cared. "I know," he repeated, before standing and slipping out of the room, closing the door behind him. Outside, he asked the staff to bring Clara's car around and instructed them not to disturb her. He told them she was dealing with something personal and needed space. They nodded with quiet understanding and went about their work. The veterans weren't blind to reality. They understood exactly who Mr. Talbot was and recognized the gravity of the situation. That day, an oppressive stillness settled over the neighborhood, an unspoken tension that no one dared to disturb. As Clara neared home, just 15 minutes away, she sent Ryan a message. "Any chance you could come by after the kids are down for the night? I know this is all on me, but I'd really like to find a way to fix it. Cinderella." Ryan replied, "I'm heading out now. The kids have already eaten. This is the last time I'll initiate contact until I decide otherwise. Please honor that." Tears blurred Clara's vision as the weight of his words sank in. He probably wouldn't ever use that name for her again. She was no longer his partner in every sense of the word, not his trusted friend, not the woman he leaned on. In his eyes, she was the one who betrayed their bond, choosing another man over the life they built. What future could any of them possibly have now? After a week that seemed to stretch into eternity, Ryan finally reached out. Clara answered instantly. "Hi, Ryan. I'm so grateful you called," she said, her voice barely steady with cautious optimism. He spoke slowly, deliberately. "I'll be home around 5 tonight. Somehow I got through the whole week without taking a single day off," he said, voice cracking near the end. There was a long silence as he tried to stay composed. Clara didn't interrupt. "I'll try to keep things light around the kids," he continued. "I'm hoping I can fake normal for the few hours before their bedtime. I'll sleep in the guest room. I won't speak to you again until morning when the kids are up. I'll try to be out of bed before they notice anything. Are you okay with that?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes, Ryan. Whatever you feel is best." She hesitated, then asked quietly, "When do you think we'll actually talk?" Her voice trembled with restrained urgency. She didn't want to pressure him, but every part of her needed to hear his thoughts, no matter how painful. "I arranged for Mrs. Bowling to look after the kids Sunday afternoon," he said. "We can head to the park, somewhere quiet. We can talk there. But I think we should spend Saturday with the kids, all of us together. We don't know how many more days like that we'll get, if we get any more at all." That final sentence struck Clara like a physical blow. The pain in his tone made her stomach twist. She had never heard that kind of brokenness in his voice before. Through every difficulty they'd ever faced, Ryan had always been their anchor. But now, this was something else entirely. Betrayal doesn't just hurt, it unravels. "Okay, honey," she said gently. His voice returned, cold and stripped of warmth. "Don't call me that. No pet names. I'm not your love, and I'm definitely not your Cinderella. We're two adults caught in a nightmare we can't seem to wake up from. Don't say anything to me that sounds like love again. I need that from you." Before she could answer, the call ended. Clara sank into a chair, shaking, the grief coursing through her like a storm. Somehow, they got through Friday night's pizza and movie ritual. They even managed a laugh or two when Michael launched into a passionate plea for a family dog. Saturday passed in much the same way. They both wore masks, carefully crafted for their children's sake. There were fleeting moments when they thought Sarah might sense the underlying tension, so they leaned harder into the illusion. Two loving parents, holding it together. The hardest moment came during a walk by the water, when Michael asked for a group hug. As Ryan pulled her in, Clara caught sight of his vacant eyes, and it nearly broke her. Even as he held her tightly, his every action was a lie, a performance for their kids. Sunday morning arrived with pancakes and lazy lounging in pajamas. Later, Ryan told the children he and their mother had some errands, and that Mrs. Bowling would be staying with them for a few hours. Sarah and Michael weren't thrilled. They wanted more time as a family, but Ryan stood firm, and they eventually got ready without protest. At the park, the two wandered aimlessly before settling on a quiet patch tucked beneath a canopy of trees, far from the road. An old picnic table sat there, weathered by time. Ryan sat with his back straight, eyes scanning the open space before him. That's just like him, Clara thought. Always aware, always needing a clear view of everything around him. I'd like you to go first, Ryan said evenly. If I speak now, I might lose control. I won't stop you. Take all the time you need, 5 minutes, an hour. It's up to you. Say everything that's in your heart. I won't speak until you're done. Is that all right? Clara hesitated, her mind spinning. This didn't feel like a heart-to-heart. It felt more like a formal exchange, and she usually hated being the one to begin in moments like this. But things weren't usual, and the blame was hers to carry. So she gave a slight nod. Okay, she said softly, doing her best to give him what he needed. I don't even know how to begin this, Ryan. I've been running through the words in my head ever since last Friday when... She couldn't bring herself to continue. The words got stuck. The memory of the look in his eyes, raw pain, confusion, heartbreak, was too much to relive. You deserve honesty, and I can't keep hiding from that. So here it is. For the past 8 months, I've been physically involved with Brandon. He buried his face in his palms, but after a moment, looked up at her, silently telling her to go on. Before I met him, I'd never once been attracted to anyone else. I'd never crossed a line, never betrayed your trust. This didn't start because anything was missing between us. I wasn't searching for something else. But I won't pretend I resisted him either. I allowed it. I enjoyed his presence. I didn't shut down his flirting or his interest. It became clear early on that we clicked professionally, but also that something more was simmering beneath the surface. For the first time in my life, I felt drawn to someone who wasn't my husband. I'm not trying to excuse anything, and I'm not here to make him look better than he is. But the first time something almost happened between us, he stepped back. Right before we kissed, he asked me to decide if I wanted this or if we were stopping right then. He said he wouldn't push me, that it had to be my choice. And I chose. I wanted it. No one pushed me into this. No one manipulated me. Every step I took willingly. I still don't fully understand why I allowed it to happen, but I know I wasn't a victim. This is my responsibility. Every part of it. Bub! She caught herself. I'm sorry, Ryan. More than anything, I want to say I still love you. That this didn't mean anything. That I'll do whatever it takes to fix us. But I can't say that honestly. I've been keeping a part of myself hidden from you for months. I don't think you noticed. Maybe you didn't. But even when I was physically with you, part of me wasn't really there. That part was with him. If that weren't true, I wouldn't have done what I did. I lied. To you. To myself. I told myself I still loved you the same way, that this thing with Brandon would fade and we'd find our way back. That you'd never have to know. We'd raise the kids together, grow old side by side, and you'd never find out. But lies don't begin when they're spoken. They start inside. And once I started lying to myself, everything else followed. I've betrayed everything I cared about. I don't know what this means for our future or for our children. But I know this much. Nothing good comes from what I've done, even if by some miracle we move forward. If nothing else, I want you to hear this from me first. I am ashamed beyond words. Regret doesn't even begin to describe what I feel. This isn't about guilt from being caught. I'm not sorry just because you found out. I'm shattered because I broke the heart of the only man who ever loved me exactly as I was. Ryan lowered his head and wept. It was a mercy that they were alone, away from everyone, because the depth of his grief could have shattered the air around them. Where once there had been trust, love, laughter, now there was only emptiness. A vast chasm of humiliation, devastation, and betrayal. Part of him wanted to scream, to curse her, to hurl accusations like daggers. But he didn't. And she knew, deeply, that his silence was far more painful than rage ever could be. She had taken something from him, something irreplaceable. 10 minutes slipped by. To her, they stretched like hours. At last, he gathered himself. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, steady. Clara, I don't know if this is the last time we'll ever sit here like this, as husband and wife. I don't even know what I'm feeling yet, but I'm grateful you didn't insult me further by calling this meaningless, or by throwing empty I love yous at me that don't ring true anymore. Thank you for at least giving me the truth. At least I want to believe it's the truth. But how can I now? She dropped her head into her hands, crushed by the weight of his words. But he wasn't done. You were with Brandon for 8 months, on and off, at the very least, once a month. And through it all, I had no idea. Because I trusted you. I gave you everything, my heart, my love, my whole life. I can't even imagine how I could ever trust you again. Cinderella's gone, Clara. This isn't some fairy tale. There's no happy ending coming around the corner. There's no Prince Charming in this story. I've never understood what real hopelessness feels like until now. And I hate it. But it's the only thing that feels real to me at the moment. I don't know what happens next. But I'm not filing for divorce, not today, maybe not ever. There's something a therapist once said. If you're married with kids and considering divorce, go outside and throw yourself under a bus. Because children can survive grief, but they never get over abandonment. That stuck with me. I never thought it would apply to my own life. But I can't fake this for the next 11 years, waiting for the twins to graduate. I can't lie every day. I can't sit across from you and pretend we're okay. He paused, drew in a shaky breath, then added, So, 2 days after my world collapsed, I feel completely lost. I'm frozen. Empty. I can't see any future from here. But I made an appointment with a psychologist this week. Because I need help. Not for us, not for the marriage, for me. I need to find a way through this without destroying myself, or my connection with the kids. There was a flicker of hope in Clara's eyes. But he saw it and quickly said, I'm not doing this for you, Clara. This isn't about rescuing our past. It's about holding on to what little of me is left so I can still be the father they need. He stopped, and after a long silence, Clara finally spoke. Her voice was so faint, it almost disappeared into the breeze. So, what does that mean for us? Where do we go from here? Should we book a hotel or find a short-term rental? I'd rather stay at the house for now, Ryan replied evenly. If I go on one overnight work trip a week to clear my head, and you take a couple of your usual weekend getaways next month, I think I can handle it. He met her eyes directly. Whatever you choose to do, who you spend time with, where you go, that's your call. I'm not stepping into the caretaker role anymore. So if being with Brandon feels right to you, I won't stand in your way. Clara opened her mouth. Ryan, I'm not planning to... But he raised a hand, stopping her. Don't, he said, quiet but resolute. You're speaking to someone who's given up the right to care, who you're drawn to, whether you end up in someone else's bed. It's not my business now. The only way I'm getting through this is by treating you the same way you treated me for nearly a year. He let the moment sit. You stopped loving me a long time ago. I'm just finally catching up. His voice wasn't sharp, just weary. Maybe therapy will teach me how to set boundaries better. But until then, I need space. You're on your own. For the next half hour, almost nothing was said. The silence between them was heavy. Tears came, but neither offered a hand or a comforting word. No pledges to try again, no reaching across the table. Just arms folded tight and eyes that couldn't hold each other's gaze. Layla's warning echoed like prophecy. The price of everything was finally due, and Clara could barely bear the weight of it. She didn't realize yet. Ryan hadn't entirely given up. Not yet. The next few weeks drifted by in a strange, surreal holding pattern. Outwardly, they looked fine, normal even. They showed up for Sarah's soccer games, clapping like proud parents, and stayed through Michael's karate practices with cheerful faces. At the mid-month teacher conferences, they exchanged pleasant glances and shared easy small talk. Ms. Snyder never sensed anything amiss. But when the kids were tucked in and the lights dimmed, reality came flooding back. Clara would look at Ryan across the room, searching for some glimmer of connection in his expression. Ryan fought to keep himself from breaking apart. She didn't shy away from accountability, unlike what some partners might do, but the damage was already done. No amount of honesty could erase the betrayal Ryan felt every day. Each week, he told the kids he had business out of town, late-night departures, always home by the next evening. These were his moments of escape. Quiet hours alone, walking for miles, trying to find his bearings again. It slowly became clear. This wasn't something he could just muscle through. If nothing changed, he'd need more help than self-reflection could provide. Ryan had always been meticulous and analytical. His talent for evaluating investments and minimizing risk had earned him a partner title at his firm. He missed nothing, opportunity or threat. Now he turned that same precision toward the collapse of his marriage. Should he stay or leave? What were the long-term impacts on the kids? Was it better to maintain the illusion of family or to break the bond cleanly? What might happen at work if the situation became public? His image was built in part on being a loyal husband and father. And what about the practical aspects? Finances, assets, custody. Would Clara continue with her business? Did she even understand that her connection to Brandon's hotel empire had become a liability? Was her regret sincere, or just a reaction to getting caught? Most importantly, Ryan asked himself, could she fully own what she had done? Could she face the person she had become? Were there more paths than just staying or walking away? That final question stayed with him. Could there be another way? Something different from either conventional option? It was a radical thought. Risky, unconventional, full of emotional landmines. But the more Ryan explored it, the more he believed it might offer a way forward. For her, for the kids, and maybe even for himself. 3 nights into one of his self-styled business escapes, Ryan sat on the balcony of a Marriott courtyard, letting the idea churn in his mind. He picked it apart from every angle, weighing every ripple effect. If he was going to present this to her, it had to be watertight. And still, there was hope. However faint, it was there. 2 weeks later, the concept had matured. It was still a work in progress, but Ryan felt it was ready enough to begin a real dialogue. He arranged for Mrs. Bowling to stay with the children. Then he asked Clara to take a drive with him. They ended up back at the park, the one where, weeks earlier, their reality had cracked open like thin ice. At the same worn picnic table, they sat again. This time, Ryan started slowly, testing his voice, watching her face. I don't want to drag us through everything again, especially that night I saw you with Brandon, he said, his tone steady but laced with pain. You already know what that did to me. I've never claimed to be perfect. Not as a man, and definitely not as a husband. But I never crossed the line. Not once. I've had chances, moments of temptation, but I always stopped short, because I was all in, with you. He exhaled, his voice softening. From the minute I met you, I was gone. I believed we were enough for each other, that we'd be side by side through everything, that we'd grow old together. His voice wavered. But now I see I misunderstood the depth of your commitment. I thought I knew where we stood. I was wrong. Tears filled Clara's eyes. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Ryan, I know I've lost the right to ask, but I'm asking anyway. Please, give me a second chance. She leaned toward him, eyes searching. I want to face the hard parts with you, the resentment, the betrayal, all of it. I'm not ready to walk away from us. I still believe in what we could be. I'll fight for it, with everything I've got. Ryan averted his eyes, a moment of silence stretching before he spoke. I believe you, Clara. I don't doubt that you mean what you're saying. And I've spent so many nights wrestling with what this could mean for us, for everything we've been through. His voice was low, controlled, but there was a tremor of finality in it. A part of me wants to believe we've earned enough grace, that we've developed the strength to forgive, to somehow find a way forward. For a brief instant, Clara felt a surge of hope stir within her. But before she could respond, Ryan continued, unflinching. But I've made my decision, and it's one I can't take back, because I've come to realize that this relationship, this version of life we've built, no longer fits who I am, and I have 2 reasons why. He inhaled slowly, his gaze falling to the floor. First, forgiveness might be possible, but trust? I can't see any path to rebuilding that. It's vanished, Clara. Gone without a trace. If you told me what day it is, I'd still need to check a calendar. If you said the sky was blue, I'd look for myself. A quiet shake of his head accompanied the deepening weight in his voice. I can't watch you leave the house without wondering if you're really going to work, or if you're going back to him, or someone else. I can't live under the same roof with you and not feel that knot in my chest, constantly asking where your loyalty truly lies. And secondly, his voice faltered slightly before he forced the next words out. I can't reach for you as a husband reaches for his wife, not without seeing his face, not without reliving the choice you made, over and over, to be with him instead of me. You chose him, Clara, not once, many times. You gave yourself to him without once stopping to consider the weight of what we had, what I felt, what we were trying to build together. Every time I look at you now, I see him. I see Brandon Dalton staring back through your eyes. Clara's shoulders drooped, her body folding into itself under the heaviness of shame. She wanted to offer him everything, to swear loyalty, to beg for another chance. But deep inside, she knew she no longer had the right to ask for his trust. That right had been shattered. I want to fix this, Ryan, she whispered, barely holding back tears. Don't you think we're worth fighting for? For the first time, she saw something flicker across his face, dark and burning. A quiet fury she had never seen in him before. His stare pierced through her, and instinctively she shrank back. He wasn't shouting, but his voice had gone cold, sharp-edged, honed like steel. Fight for us? He repeated, his teeth clenched. You want to fight now? He stepped closer, barely containing the emotion that trembled beneath his surface. What do you think I've been doing all this time, Clara? Working late nights, pushing myself to exhaustion, climbing that ladder, all for us. Coming home drained, but still making time for the kids. That was for us. Remembering your little favorites, going out of my way to show you love every damn day, that was me fighting. From every small kindness to every major sacrifice, I fought for this marriage with everything I had. I fought because I believed in us, because I loved you completely. His expression was one of disbelief, raw and wounded. And what did you do in return? You slept with him, repeatedly. That was your way of fighting? He let out a bitter, broken laugh, half agony, half disbelief. And now I'm the one accused of giving up? You quit 8 months ago, you made your decision, and now you're upset that I won't pretend it never happened? Ryan swiped at his face, his eyes glassy with the emotion he could no longer keep buried. There's so much I want to ask you, so much that doesn't make sense to me. But how do you question someone who's lied so convincingly for so long? How can I trust a single word out of your mouth? Maybe you're remorseful. Maybe you wish it hadn't happened. Or maybe this is just another act, just a new attempt to win back my trust so you can hide it better next time. He stared at her, broken, gutted. I want to believe you've changed. But the only thing I truly believe is that you've just learned how to cover your tracks more carefully. A crack surfaced in his voice. I miss what we used to have, those late-night talks, those real moments when nothing stood between us. I miss the truth. But that couple, they're gone. You killed them, Clara. You did that. There's no returning to what we had. The only path left is the one that leads forward. And I'm taking it. I have to. He drew in a sharp breath, then let it out slowly. It hit me the other night, at the Ritz. That dinner we had. It was right after your weekend with him. You came home from his bed, let me dress you up, treat you like a queen, spoil you with wine and laughter. His voice cracked with disgust and sorrow. You smiled across the table at me while I told you how lucky I felt, how proud I was to be your husband. All the while, you sat there knowing the truth. He turned away, shaking his head. You must have laughed inside. I was a fool, celebrating a version of you that no longer existed, and I didn't even know it. He paused, then said quietly, "But I'm done being that fool." Clara remained frozen, silent, gutted by the truth laid bare before her. She couldn't offer a single word in her defense. Ryan had been right. He had given everything, and she had destroyed it. The guilt burned her from the inside out. Barely able to speak, she asked, "Are you going to divorce me?" Ryan's head moved side to side, slowly. "Number, I'm not filing for divorce, but I'm not staying in this marriage either. I'm taking a different route. One I believe is the fairest, even if it hurts." His voice was firm, final. "I'll lay it all out for you in a few weeks. Not today, but soon. I'm not here to tell you what you should do. I'll just show you the path I've chosen, what I'm going to do. I don't need your blessing, Clara. I don't trust you to have my best interest, or our kids, in mind. That trust is gone. But once I've shared my plan, you can decide how you'll respond." "I won't stand in your way." Clara leaned in slightly, her voice barely steady. "Why wait? Why not just tell me now?" she asked, desperate for clarity. She longed to reach for him, to close the widening gap between them, but she knew any touch from her would be unwelcome now. Ryan met her gaze, calm, resigned, his sorrow as loud as any scream. "You'll understand," he said. They spoke for a little while longer, Clara asking quietly for more, Ryan refusing to explain further. He believed the time would come when she'd see everything clearly. And when he rose to go, a single thought flashed in her mind, something her friend Layla had said months ago. "If you dance to his music," Layla had warned her, "the piper will come to collect." Now at last Clara understood. The piper had arrived. Ryan stood in stunned silence, the weight of Layla's confession crashing down on him. She had known everything, and she had tried to warn Clara and Brandon before it all unfolded. The knowledge struck deeper than he ever anticipated. "So you had a warning? You saw this coming and still moved forward with Brandon? And you never thought to tell me? To confide in me even once? You kept this all to yourself and just carried on?" Tears welled up in Ryan's eyes, spilling freely down his cheeks. The man Clara had always seen as unshakable was now breaking before her, weeping openly. Clara crumpled into herself, her sobs racking her body as she hid her face in her arms, drowning in anguish. Ryan stirred slightly, and in that fleeting motion, a fragile hope rose in her, that he might come to her, hold her, offer some kind of warmth. "Please, God," she prayed silently, "let him come to me, let him hold me." But instead, he stepped back, arms crossed, moving toward her, but only to put space between them before speaking. No embrace came. When she finally looked up, her face streaked with tears, he met her gaze with a hardened calm. "The trumpet sounded," he said, voice low, "and the collector's here. Part of the price has been paid. Maybe someday the rest will come due." Exactly 17 days later, Ryan set off on one of his regular work trips. The routine gave him time alone to think, to slowly unpack the storm still raging inside him. Before he left, he hugged the kids a little longer than usual, kissed them goodbye with a quiet heaviness Clara hadn't seen before. Even just one day apart must be hurting him, she thought, watching him go. Lately, Clara had started sleeping a bit more peacefully, thanks to melatonin easing her restless nights. Ryan had suggested letting the kids stay over at Mrs. Bowling's, a woman who was practically family, so Clara could unwind with a glass or two of wine and finally get some uninterrupted rest. She agreed, and Mrs. Bowling had been more than happy to take the children for the evening. Then, at 5:30 a.m., her phone began vibrating insistently. It took several minutes for her to wake enough to notice. Still groggy, she groped for the phone, flipped it open, and held it to her ear. The screen had shown 911. "Hello?" she said, voice raspy with sleep. "Is this Clara Talbot, wife of Richard Talbot?" a calm official voice asked. Clara bolted upright in bed. Hardly anyone ever used Ryan's full name. "Yes," she said, now alert and anxious. "I'm his wife. What's going on?" "I need to confirm your address," the voice said. "Is it 918 South El Camino Court?" "Yes, that's correct," she answered, her voice rising. "Please, what is this about? Can you confirm what vehicle your husband was driving?" "He has a dark gray Lexus ES-2019 model," she replied immediately. "Please tell me what happened." The voice on the other end softened. "Mrs. Talbot, I'm very sorry to inform you. Your husband was involved in a serious collision on California Highway 79 near the Pacific Crest Trailhead by Warner Springs." Clara's heart stopped. "Is he all right? Where is he? Is he on his way to a hospital?" "I'm so sorry," the voice said, now gentle. "The accident was fatal. I don't have further details at this time, but his body is en route to the University of California Medical Center in San Diego. He'll be arriving shortly. I offer my deepest condolences." Clara froze. The words seemed unreal, but then reality surged in, brutal and swift. A scream tore from her throat, echoing through the house. Anyone nearby could have heard the pure grief in that sound. She clutched her pillow, shaking, crying out, unable to stop. It felt like hours before her body gave out from exhaustion and her sobs faded to silence. Thoughts returned in slow, sharp fragments. The children, how will I tell them? My mother, I have to call her, and Ryan's parents. They're in Denver. Who do I even call? Who can help me through this? The hospital. I have to go. But can I even drive? Kara was overseas on business, unreachable for days, maybe longer. Clara splashed her face with cold water, threw on clothes, pulled her hair back into a ponytail. Just as she grabbed her keys and reached the front door, the doorbell rang. Who could that be this early, she wondered, confused. At the door stood Brad Stanton, Ryan's close friend and their longtime attorney. His face was pale, his expression shattered, like someone who had just been punched in the soul. "Clara," he said softly, "I just heard. The crash. I can't believe it. I'm so sorry." At those words, she collapsed into his arms, trembling violently as she wept. Brad wrapped his arms around her, steadying her as she shook. A moment later, Mrs. Bowling, still in her robe, came hurrying across the lawn, worry etched into her face. Clara couldn't speak. Brad quietly took over, explaining the news in hushed tones. Mrs. Bowling's face crumpled in grief, and she reached for Clara, embracing her like a mother would. For several long minutes, the three stood in silence, surrounded by sorrow. Slowly, Clara gathered what little strength she had. "I need to go," she whispered through the fog. "I have to get to San Diego. I can't wait." She had to see him. She had to see Ryan. Brad and Mrs. Bowling quickly put together a plan. She would stay behind with the children, offer them a simple, vague explanation about their mother's sudden departure, and then take them to school as usual. The full truth could wait. This wasn't the moment for it. Brad wouldn't let anyone else drive. He insisted on taking Clara himself. In no time, they were speeding down the freeway. Clara's phone buzzed endlessly, calls and messages from friends desperate for answers. She called her mother, who promised to catch the next flight. Then came the unbearable duty of contacting Ryan's parents, Connor and Lily Talbot. The call left them devastated. They too vowed to get the earliest flight and arrive before the kids returned from school. Clara silenced her phone and turned her gaze toward the Pacific Ocean. Tears slid down her cheeks without a sound. The following 5 days passed in a haze of grief and disorder. The children needed support, but Clara had help. Her mother, Ryan's parents, and Mrs. Bowling became her lifelines as she navigated the nightmare of telling her children the truth. Endless visits from officers, back and forth with insurance agents, and constant legal paperwork left her emotionally drained. As it turned out, Ryan hadn't just taken out one life insurance policy, he had three, and haunting questions swirled in her mind. What had he been doing so far from home, driving along a deserted road at dawn? Nobody said it outright, but the implication was clear. He had been speeding excessively. The toxicology report didn't offer any dramatic revelations. Ryan hadn't been drinking or using drugs. His system was clean. Even the autopsy revealed that his final meal had been simple: steak, potatoes, salad, and water. It didn't make sense, none of it. Brandon picked up his phone more than once, trying to write something to Clara, only to delete the message each time. He could only imagine the depth of her suffering, and anything he said now would only add to the weight she carried. Layla had just started a meeting with a new client when the news reached her. Her assistant, Stacy, immediately sensed something was off. Layla's face twisted with anguish, yet there was a strange calmness to how she carried on. She never showed up at Ryan's funeral. Held on a Friday morning, the funeral brought together everyone who had known and cared for Ryan. As person after person shared memories, Clara found herself taken aback. She had always known he was good, but the outpouring of admiration, tales of Ryan's kindness, loyalty, and decency, left her speechless. He was remembered as a trusted friend, a generous leader, and an honorable man. Each story chipped away at her already fragile sense of self. The guilt crushed her. If only she hadn't strayed. If only she had remained true to him. Maybe then Ryan would still be alive. She needed to know how far the damage from her choices had gone. That Sunday, as the afternoon light began to fade, Brad arrived. After a quiet exchange with Clara's mother and mother-in-law, the women gathered the kids and quietly slipped out. When Clara came downstairs, she found Brad sitting at the kitchen table, his expression unreadable, composed, yet with a faint glimmer of something she couldn't place, almost like smug satisfaction. She didn't understand the look he gave her. She offered him something to drink, but he declined with a shake of his head and gestured for her to take a seat. "Clara," he began, voice calm, "there are two things I need to make clear before we go any further. First, I'm your friend, yes, but that's not why I'm here. I'm acting in my professional role." He paused, letting the weight of his words land. "My client is Ryan." Clara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Yes," Brad confirmed. "I still call him my client. Even though he's gone, I'm still responsible for his affairs, legal and financial." He drew a breath before continuing. "Second, you need to understand that I had no knowledge whatsoever of what was going to happen. I didn't know he'd be in that crash." Clara blinked, trying to grasp what he was saying. How could anyone have predicted such a thing? Brad seemed to anticipate her confusion. "Ryan left me with specific instructions, both verbal and written. He wanted everything carried out exactly as he laid it out. He even insisted on paying me in advance, though I offered to do it for nothing. He wanted everything done by the book." He pulled an envelope from inside his jacket and slid it across the table. "I don't know what's inside," he said, placing it into her shaking hands. "But Ryan told me precisely when and how to deliver it. He also made it clear I was to leave immediately afterward. He wanted you to read it alone." Clara held the letter gingerly, as if it might burn through her skin. "Did he tell you anything else?" she asked quietly. Brad hesitated, visibly uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, Clara. Ryan made me promise not to disclose anything further. What we discussed, what I did, or anything he planned. This is between you and him." Without another word, Brad stood and exited, leaving Clara alone at the kitchen table, the envelope heavy in her hands. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. The moment her eyes hit the page, it was as though Ryan had returned, if only to have the last word. "Clara, by now you know I'm gone. The funeral has come and gone. Brad gave you this letter, then walked away. The kids are with your mother and mine. They've agreed to give you some time. What you're about to read isn't easy. This was the third option, Clara, the only one that made any kind of sense. I loved you with everything I had. But now that love is gone, because you destroyed it, I did the best I could with what little remained. 2 weeks ago, I bought 3 acres out by Eagle's Nest, right next to the lake. That's how I found myself on Highway 79 the day everything shifted. The promotion had come through not long before, and that's what prompted the land purchase. Things were finally stable for both of us, financially speaking. I meant it to be a surprise for you and the kids, a retreat, a quiet place where we could build memories over summers and long weekends. But the truth is, that was only the surface. The real purpose of that land was something else entirely. You need to stick to the cover story. If the insurance company gets even a hint that my death wasn't accidental, they'll reject the claim. I'd gone out to the cabin to take care of some odds and ends and had planned to leave at dawn. There was a meeting with a client scheduled for 9:30 that morning. I was in a rush. I drove too fast, lost control. They'll look into it, of course, but they won't find anything unusual. Just stay on script and Brad will make sure everything stays intact. Regarding the insurance, some months back, I amended my will. 90% of what I own, just over $3 billion, has been placed in a trust for the kids. They'll be covered for school, college, and whatever else comes after. The remainder of the trust will be theirs when they turn 30, split evenly. Brad will manage the disbursements when the time comes. I allocated 10%, about $300,000 for you, enough to support you until you find your footing again. I probably wouldn't have left anything at all if I weren't drowning in guilt. But I know you'll need to care for them while putting on a show of grief, and that won't be easy. This should be enough to get through that period. As for the children, remember when I told you what a psychologist once said? That the death of a parent is often less damaging to kids than divorce. I looked into it myself. Most of what I found agreed with that view. That's why I couldn't bring myself to go through with a separation, Clara. I couldn't bear to break them that way. Maybe one day they'll discover what really happened, and maybe they'll hate me for it. I hope they won't. But if they do, I can only pray that someone helps them see how brutal life can be. At least for now, they can grieve a parent, rather than live with the confusion of abandonment. I don't know what your life will look like moving forward. Maybe you'll reconnect with Brandon. Maybe someone new will appear. Whatever happens, I ask just one thing. Put the kids first. Let their needs come before your own. In less than 10 years, they'll be grown and gone. Until then, maybe keep your personal life private. Separate. One last request. When you're done reading this, destroy it completely. Not a single word can remain. If anyone finds this, everything I've planned for the children could unravel. Read it again if you need to, then burn it. Every page, every scrap. If I ever meant anything to you, please burn it. And who knows, maybe one day you'll hear from me again. Ryan. Clara's cries shattered the stillness. She dropped to the floor, sobbing Ryan's name, the weight of grief and guilt pressing down like a vice. The affair had seemed so small once, but now it felt unbearable. After nearly an hour of weeping, she finally found the strength to sit up. She read the letter twice more, slowly, carefully. Then, with trembling fingers, she brought it to the fireplace and lit a match. She watched until the last piece of it curled into nothing. She thought she'd heard Piper's voice on the phone earlier. Maybe she had. Epilogue. 12 years have passed since Ryan Talbot was presumed dead on a lonely stretch of Highway 79. But in reality, the man known as Ryan died the moment he saw his wife in another man's arms. That betrayal was the true end. Emotionally, spiritually. Everything after was simply logistics. Clara never married again, and she kept the truth of Ryan's disappearance locked away. She honored his wishes, used the $300,000 to care for the kids, and helped them through their grief. It took her over a year to return to work. She tried to go back to wedding planning, her old profession, but her heart wasn't in it. Eventually, she shifted into the corporate world, event coordination, and found success there. Romantically, she tested the waters a few times, but no one ever quite measured up to Ryan. Sometimes she feared she was permanently broken. Therapy helped, a little. Still, she wondered, if love came again, would she betray it again? Michael and Sarah often encouraged her to find happiness. Dad would have wanted that, they'd say. And it was true. He had wanted that. He did, but it was the same excuse she'd used to justify the affair. The guilt never really left her. As for Brandon, 4 months after Ryan's accident, he reached out. A short message, sent with the hope that enough time had passed. According to Layla, there hadn't been anything between them in a long time. Still, Brandon had always tried to be there for her in his way. One day, he finally sent her a message. "I'm so sorry, B." Her reply came within minutes. "So am I. Goodbye." It was the last thing they ever said to each other. Michael and Sarah both made it through high school and are now in college. Each followed a path carved by their parents' traits. Michael, outgoing and magnetic like his mother, chose hospitality and marketing at USC. Sarah, quiet and introspective, reflected her father's logic and thoughtfulness. Fixing things, finding solutions, that's what drove her out of bed each morning. Eventually, she pursued her studies at Stanford, choosing economics as her major. Their father's death, which came when they were just 8 years old, left a mark that never quite faded. The image of him never returning through the front door remained etched in their minds, lingering for years, even as their mother and grandparents worked relentlessly to help them navigate the sorrow and rediscover happiness. Over time, each sibling made a quiet, personal vow to let the memory of their father guide the direction of their lives. It was a soft, temperate spring afternoon when Clara sat at her desk in the apartment. Her fingers curled around a hot mug of strong coffee as she reviewed the latest contract for an executive retreat. Then the doorbell rang. She rose and answered it, and there he was, Brad Stanton. "Brad, I can't believe it! It's been so long!" She greeted him with genuine warmth, stepping forward to embrace him. "I'm really happy to see you." He hugged her back, though something about the stiffness in his body made her pull back slightly. "Thanks, Clara. Mind if we sit down? There's something we need to talk about." His voice carried an edge of formality that gave her pause. This wasn't just a spontaneous visit from an old friend. They moved to the table in the kitchen. Brad began to speak, and in that moment, something clicked. April 7th. It hit her, Ryan's birthday. She made a mental note to call the kids once Brad was gone. "You know," Brad started, his expression serious. "Before Ryan passed, he updated his will and gave me some very detailed instructions." He hesitated before continuing. "I'll be honest with you, Clara. I could tell something was wrong. He was distant, closed off. I tried to reach him, but he wouldn't open up. As his attorney, I had no choice but to carry out his wishes. As his friend, I pushed. I asked questions, but he never told me the truth, until today." Clara's eyebrows lifted, a mix of confusion and unease shadowing her face. "What do you mean, Brad?" He took a breath. "Before he died, Ryan left me a letter. A long one, but he never came back to collect it. This morning, right at 6 o'clock, someone banged on my door. When I answered, a courier handed me an envelope. The sender? Just a P.O. box in Austin. I didn't recognize it. At first, I was irritated to be woken up so early, but my curiosity got the better of me. I went back to my office, opened the envelope, and found a typed letter, 12 pages, single-spaced. And with it, there was a small handwritten note signed by someone named Layla. At the mention of that name, Clara's body went rigid. A storm of old pain, resentment, and regret surged through her. Brad continued. The note said, simply, "Please read carefully and follow the instructions. L." So I began reading what Ryan wrote. The first line? Classic Ryan. "Hey buddy, get your ass out of bed. I need your help tying up some loose ends." He even pointed out the time, 6 a.m., said he'd paid extra to make sure the delivery was right on time. Brad stopped briefly, looking at her with a deep and unreadable expression. "I'm not going to go line by line with you, Clara, but just know this. He told me everything. Everything." Clara's eyes filled with tears as the weight of his words settled in. "I still can't grasp how you could betray someone like Ryan," Brad said quietly, fury simmering beneath his voice. "He gave you his whole heart, his faith, and in the end, his life." He stood, pulled a white envelope from inside his jacket, and placed it in front of her. "This is for you." He didn't sit back down. "I won't be speaking with you again, Clara. I'll stay in touch with Michael and Sarah. They're Ryan's kids and my godchildren. If we bump into each other someday, I'll be polite. For them, for him, but not for you. Don't try to contact me, do you understand? Barely managing to get the words out, Clara murmured, "Yes, I understand." Without another word, Brad turned and left. As he walked away, she caught his voice muttering under his breath, "Selfish goddamn whore." The envelope remained on the table, silent and still, daring her to reach for it. She recognized Ryan's handwriting instantly. Several minutes passed before she could bring herself to open it. But she did. "Clara, it's been 12 years since everything unraveled, since the decisions and betrayals that led us to where we are. In the final letter I left you, I said that maybe, one day, you'd hear from me again. Maybe someday the kids would finally understand what really happened. To them. To us. Well, today is that day. When I found out that Layla had warned you, tried to stop you from taking things further with Brandon, and that you ignored her, I reached out to her. She was the only one I could trust with what came next. She begged me not to go through with it. She even offered me another way out, told me I could bring the kids to Austin, stay with her. Can you imagine that? A woman with real compassion. I wish someone like her had come into my life before I ever met you, but that wasn't how it went. So when I told her no, she agreed to honor my final requests. The first was simple. Protect this letter until today, my 45th birthday. On this day, she would send a separate note to Brad and give him this letter at exactly 6 a.m. He would read it first. Then he would give it to you. I made sure this message would get to you no matter what happened. That said, I genuinely hope Brad and Layla are safe, and that they've been able to carry out what I asked of them. Third, as of this morning, both Michael and Sarah will have received letters much like this one. In them, I disclose the full truth of what occurred 12 years ago, leaving no part untold. There are no omissions. They're old enough now to understand everything, and I believe they have the right to learn the full account. Every part of it. Thankfully, under California law, the statute of limitations for insurance fraud runs only 4 years. That means their inheritance is untouched. As I mentioned in an earlier message, what they discover might drive them to anger, even hatred. Still, I trust Brad and Layla will help them process everything. You, on the other hand, may you find success unraveling the mountain of deceit you've woven for them over the last dozen years. Should they come looking for you, be ready. They'll have questions, many of them. Fourth, if your mother is still alive, or if mine, or my father's, is still around, they will receive their own versions of this letter. As former partners in the business, they are entitled to the truth as well. Fifth, as for Brandon, today's Santa Barbara News Press includes a full-page investigative piece detailing his role in all of this. It outlines how the two of you orchestrated lavish wedding productions while simultaneously engaging in a covert relationship behind my back, and while he was also pursuing someone else's wife. The article concludes with a clear advisory that future clients should look elsewhere for services. I may not have the means to destroy him entirely, but this should at least create some turbulence for a while. If you and he haven't already made it official, perhaps now's your moment. Maybe a little pleasure will take the edge off what's coming. And yes, your name appears in the article. So when friends, neighbors, or colleagues begin to reach out, don't act surprised. Sixth, Clara, nearly 13 years ago, I thought we had found something real, something that brought us the kind of joy most people only fantasize about. But it was all make-believe, a brutal, soul-crushing illusion. So here we are, the curtains closed, the music's faded, you've danced your way through the performance, and now the bill is due. Ryan. Just after Clara finished the letter, her phone lit up, call after call, one right after the other. Postscript, 6 months later. All 3 BD properties were sold off at a heavy loss to an Austin-based investment group in Texas. At 53, Brandon Dalton, formerly of the Trenton Group, was financially ruined. From The Cask of Amontillado by Edgar Allan Poe. In the end, I would be avenged. Of that, there was no doubt. The certainty itself eliminated any fear of consequence. I had to exact punishment, not just revenge, but vengeance without consequence.